Hello gang, Tattooed Biker here with you, and tonight we're riding back to unidentified cryptid country. And I've got 3 true encounter stories that are as creepy as they are compelling. First, a teen is camping with her family in the New Jersey Pine Barrens when she sees a horse-headed entity peering into the RV window. And then we have a strange winged creature in Arizona. And finally, a black, massive winged humanoid appearing to multiple witnesses in British Columbia. It's going to be a wild one. So get squared away, grab your boots, and let's ride to cryptid country.
Number 1. Dear Biker, I'm a Jersey native, born and raised, and I was 14 when my entire family went camping in the Pine Barrens. Ever since I was little, I've been into occult stuff, so I already knew about the Jersey Devil. I was one of the oldest cousins, so I can't tell you how many times we searched for the cabin that it was born in. Also, I should mention that we used to go camping there all the time. Less and less as we got older, but the point is, we did this often. So I remember it being the first night. We would average spend a week there. And I remember that we watched the movie Coraline that had just come out. I'm mentioning this because I had a pretty fun night before I encountered it, so it wasn't some kind of nightmare-induced hallucination or anything. So another fact is that my family didn't like to actually camp. We used to take RVs. So it's just my dad and I in our camper. And I had one bed in the back, and I slept on the couch that pulled out to be another bed. My dad closed all the blinds we had, and I was next to the biggest window in the camper. So I'm asleep and happy, and then, boom, I wake up from thunder and lightning. I remember not liking how loud it was, and not being able to go back to sleep. So I'm just lying there, listening to the storm, which must have been right above us because the lightning was frequent. Okay, so now this is where that I think I start hearing something. Footsteps, it sounds like. I thought I did, but then I thought maybe it's just an animal. But then they started off quiet, and of course, they got louder and louder, coming closer, I'm thinking. And I'm still not really thinking anything specific yet. I mean, I was still freaked out, but again, I was certain it was just maybe the storm. In a matter of seconds, it was like, uh-oh, not the storm. Mind you, I'm facing the window, up against the wall, so I could look up at the blinds and see a tiny bit of the outside. This is important info because that's when this thing came up to the window. So I'm barely breathing because in my head I'm like, what the hell just stomped up to our RV? Again, this all happened very fast and the lightning strikes. Boom! And it looks like a horse is peering into the RV. Honestly, typing this, I can still hear it breathing on the glass. I only saw a little of the bottom of its chin, I guess. This might have been my imagination, but I'm pretty sure I saw what looked like fangs. And once that lightning struck, I spun around, so I wasn't facing that window anymore. I regretted moving at all, and I'm holding my breath begging that whatever it is out there didn't see me just now. So the lightning strikes again, and I see its shadow, almost as if the lightning was striking directly behind it. It looked like a horse. Definitely had the same size head as a horse, but the top half seemed to resemble a goat. At least it looked like it had spiral horns or something. That made the top of its head look weird. Also, please remember that I was only seeing what I could in between the lightning strikes. It starts to make its way toward the front of the RV, and like I said, all our blinds are shut, so as soon as I heard these loud-ass footsteps making their way towards the front, I basically jumped up from my bed and into my dad's. I laid down behind him and didn't want to make too much movement, but I was shaking him and trying to get him up. He said something like, "Just go back to bed." He knew that I wasn't a fan of storms, so that was probably his first, still half asleep thought. Just to paint a clearer picture, I'm up against the wall behind my dad, and there's a window in front of him, and one at the top of our heads. The footsteps came around again, and since I was behind my big father, when the lightning struck, I could only see the weird top part of its head. The horns, I guess. Anyways, it was still there, just looking in. Like I said, I can still hear that heavy breathing because it was terrifying. The most confusing thing is that when it left and headed towards my aunt's campgrounds, so was the storm. In the beginning, when I initially woke up from the storm, I guessed that it must have been close. Maybe since this thing was so loud with its hooves and breathing, that's what it does. Creates a storm so it can still be stealthy. I've dealt with people who have led survival camps and spent years in the Pine Barrens with no signs whatsoever, but that is what is so intriguing in my opinion. I mean, it is an entity. It could probably make a storm if it wanted to. So as it left, the storm calmed down and I finally got back to sleep. In the morning, of course, my dad and aunt didn't believe me. And going outside that morning, the ground was semi-wet, but I remember there being no footprints. I mean, if this was some sort of nasty horse walking around, it would have to have been at least 8 feet tall to look in that window like that, unless it was standing on its hind legs. That was my big argument with my aunt and dad on why there was no way that it was just a horse. I live in Jersey City now, but I'll never forget that camping trip. It happened so fast, but it takes forever to tell. I've always wanted to share this story, but I've been reluctant, and thank you for taking the time to read this. Signed, April. Number 2. Hello, biker and all. I enjoy your channel, though I'm not the type who sees a UFO or a spiritual entity every time there's a shadow or a flash. I am open-minded and respectful of others. I've had my share of strange experiences and hardships, but now I'm just a happily normal wife and mother, just about to turn 32. The experience I'd like to share with you happened in the summer of 2002. I was 20 at the time, still living at home in a rental in East Mesa, Arizona, with my 18-year-old brother and my mom. As you may know, Arizona has typically a 6-month-long, scorching, dry summer climate. And being a transplant from beautiful Northern California, it was hard for us to adapt. Anyways, it was a hot summer night in late May or early June. My brother had just graduated high school, and I was working full-time during the day. We spent our evening talking and laughing, playing music. It really was a memorably enjoyable night. At about 10:30, I noticed that the front porch light had again burned out, as it had been doing that for about 18 months before. In fact, both of the lights over the driveway and 3 lights in our backyard were continually ceasing to function, and it seemed I was always buying bulbs and expensive strobe light bulbs. I don't know if that is somehow connected to what happened next. First, I might add that our front door was set back into the house, with the garage protruding. Our front yard was much deeper than the backyard, and was overshadowed by 3 mesquite cherry berry trees and various species of cactus. So the streetlight did little to penetrate the little den of darkness we had back there. I turned the light on in my bedroom, which was really an office nook right next to the front door, which had a large latticed picture window with run-of-the-mill blinds. I opened the blinds and the light flooded the wall of the garage. What I saw then made my skin crawl. There, on the stucco wall, was some kind of thing. It was only about 10 to 12 feet from where I was standing. The only way to describe it was that it looked like a giant, headless moth. I called my brother over. I clearly remember our conversation. "What do you suppose that is?" "I have no idea. It must be a bat of some sort." But we only have micro bats here in Arizona, and I've always heard that bats hang upside down. Well, I guess it could be a giant moth. We do live in the desert. I thought moths were attracted to light. The lights are all burnt out again. We talked there for a moment and stood next to the glass panes adjacent to the front door, with the bedroom light illuminating all the while. And this thing never stirred or moved. We decided that it was about 18 inches to 2 feet long, from blunt top to winged bottom. It was very clear yet very dark, almost black. It just hung there on the wall like a moth, but was about the size of a medium-sized fruit bat, which I believe only exists in Asia. It was maybe 5 or 6 feet off the ground. My mom came and had a look and then shuddered and then refused to stand near the door. We were both young and curious, and my brother said, "Let's go have a look at it then." We swung the door and the security screen open and took a step over the door jamb. I was suddenly struck with an unreal, unearthly fear, and I grabbed his shoulder. He looked back at me and later said that I had the most wholly terrified look on my face that he had ever seen. I'm afraid and actually have chills even writing this. Without a word, he stepped back inside and we locked both doors and closed those blinds. We camped out in the living room that night, only going to sleep after several thoughtful conversations. The very next morning at sunrise, I went out to the wall with a tape measure, and my brother and mom stood at the door and directed me as to where, how high, and how long this thing had been planted. There was no trace of anything. The dust on the stucco looked the same all around, with no residue or anything. When they were both satisfied with the positioning, I read the tape measure at 28 inches. My mom walked back into the house and has absolutely refused to speak of it ever since. My brother and I are both keenly interested in animal, insect, and plant life via books and media. I've taken an MCC course in Southwest biology, and neither of us has ever seen or heard of anything matching its description. My husband was raised here, and the only thing he could think of that size was a large owl, but this was no owl. What was it? Perhaps it is a real animal that we just can't identify. Has anyone out there had a similar experience or know what it could be? We aren't exaggerating people. We're level-headed and very analytical. Thank you for your time. Best wishes. Signed, Jessica. Number 3. Dear Tattooed Biker, this happened during the winter of 2017. I live on the Canadian West Coast in British Columbia. I think there was a bit of snow on the ground, and the sun had just set, so it wasn't completely dark yet, but not light either. My sister and her boyfriend, and me and my boyfriend, were in our backyard. My sister all of a sudden freezes and says that she sees something or someone behind a tree. She then walks over to it, and she sees it disappear. Freaked out, she wanted to go back inside, so we all went with her. When inside, she told us that what she saw was a large, black, winged creature sitting behind a tree and looking at us. Apparently, it was sitting with its wings down, covering its body kind of hunched over. Then, when she got closer, she saw it turn the other way, covering its face with its wings so it wasn't facing her anymore. It moved further away behind the tree, and once she was close enough to see it, it simply vanished. None of us believed her. We all told her it was probably just a raven, or maybe just a shadow, but she was sure that she saw something really huge with wings. We let it go, but she was clearly freaked out. Fast forward to several weeks later, my boyfriend and I, my sister and her boyfriend, the same group as before, were all in my bedroom, which is the master bedroom of the house, and we have these French doors that open up onto a sun deck and look out into our backyard. When my boyfriend opens the door to the sun deck, he looks up past our backyard to see this massive bird leave a branch in a tree. He said, Holy shit, that bird is huge. I looked up just in time to see it leave the branch and fly for like 2 or 3 seconds before it disappeared behind more trees. But whatever this was, it was much bigger than an eagle for sure. It wasn't in a tree in our backyard, but we have this embankment that goes up to these apartments that are next to us, and the tree that we saw the flying thing off of was up there. So it wasn't really clear, but we do have eagles around us often, and I've never seen one that size. This thing looked like its wingspan was over 15 feet wide, and it was solid black. My sister and her boyfriend just missed it, but they saw the tree branch it came off of still bouncing up and down from it jumping off. I said it looked like a human with wings, and my sister freaked out and reminded us of the time she saw that thing in the backyard. All of us had forgotten about it until she reminded us. Now I actually believe her. My boyfriend said it looked like a human with wings also, but he doesn't believe in stuff like that. Also, on top of this, we had a dog who passed away after the most recent sighting. She would sleep on the sun deck if it was warm enough for her, and often we would hear her growling at something in the backyard and pacing back and forth. It could have been a deer in the backyard, or maybe a raccoon, but my dog was uninterested in deer, and raccoons used to come on our deck all the time and we would hear them, but this time it was just different. So I don't know. Thanks. Signed, Monica. And there it is. All the true cryptid reports and sighting stories I have for you tonight. So what did you think about these? I look forward to reading your comments, but please, keep it respectful to the witnesses. And if you have an experience or an encounter that you'd like to share, just send it to the email address in the description, and your story may just wind up in a future video. Anyways, thanks so much for riding with me tonight. I really appreciate it. And until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker, out.